What's up guys, and welcome to my 4.4 updated Permansor Terrae guide. In this video I'm taking you over everything you do need to know in order to understand and build Dawning, including a kit overview, best Lightcones, best Relic sets and Planar Ornaments, the stats for main set and substat goals, and finally some general team building ideas. Dawning's basic attack is a generic, does physical damage based off his attack to a designated enemy. His skill will designate an ally as bondmate with the most recent target only, gives everyone a shield equal to 20% of Dawning's attack plus 400 for 3 turns, and reapplying the shield will stack its value up to 300% of the skill's current value. His ultimate does 300% of his attack as physical damage to all enemies, grants everyone a shield equal to 20% of Dawning's attack plus 400 for 3 turns. Like the skill has the 300% of skill's current shield effect, and the Soul Dragon will be enhanced for the next 2 actions, where the follow-up attack will do 80% attack as physical damage to all enemies, and 80% additional damage as the bondmate's attack, and also the bondmate's type to all enemies as well. His talent will summon Soul Dragon when an ally becomes the bondmate. Soul Dragon has an initial speed of 165, and on Soul Dragon's turn, it will dispel a debuff from all allies, grant everyone a shield equal to 10% of attack plus 200 for 3 turns. Also same effect of the 300% of skill shield, and Soul Dragon will also disappear if bondmate or Dawning is defeated. His technique will designate the person who started combat as bondmate, inflict daze on nearby enemies for 10 seconds, and at the start of the battle will automatically use skill on the bondmate without consuming skill points. For his traces, his A2, when using skill, the attack for the person that is bondmate will be increased equal to 15% of Dawning Permansor Terrae's attack. His A4 will advance Dawning's action at the start of battle by 40%. Bondmate using an attack will give Dawning 6 energy, and Soul Dragon's action will advance by 15%. And his A6, Soul Dragon additionally grants the lowest shielded ally with a shield equal to 5% of Dawning's attack plus 100. Also same thing as the skill effects, shield stacking up to 300% of current shield. While Soul Dragon is enhanced, it deals 40% of the bondmate's attack as additional damage of the bondmate's type to the highest HP enemy. For his Eidolons, his E1 will make it to where his ultimate grants a skill point, and also bondmate's alt-type res pen will be increased by 18% for 3 turns. His E2 increases the enhanced Soul Dragon's duration by 2 actions, so a total of 4. Using ultimate will advance Soul Dragon's action by 100%, and while enhanced, Soul Dragon's turn, bondmate additional damage is increased to 200% of the original value, and also is the shield 200% of its original value. E4 reduces the damage taken by bondmate by 20%. E6 makes it to where while bondmate is on the field, enemies take 20% increased damage. Bondmate's attacks ignore 12% defense, and after ultimate, the bondmate deals 330% attack as additional damage of their type to all enemies. For Lightcones, unfortunately there still has not been any change, and so he's still stuck with very limited options, with the best one by far being his signature, providing the wearer's 64% attack, making the wearer's ultimate now restore 10% of the wearer's attack as HP, so restoring HP to the team of 10% of the wearer's attack when using ultimate, and an additional 10% for the person with the lowest current HP, and will give the team Redoubt, which will increase their damage by 24%, and if they have a summon, a further 12% increase. The massive attack stick of 64% is super good for his shield potential and also his buff, as he is able to increase his attack buff based off his own attack. So the more attack you do have, the better it's going to be. This is also the literal only preservation Lightcone providing attack for that, which is also why his actual options are very limited. So also a really high base attack, and then the 64% attack on top of that. A HP restore, which is really good for like an oh crap scenario where maybe your shield ends up getting broken and you just happen to have low HP because the attack hit really hard. And also open some synergy with like Mortanix Blade, as you do have a heal for a shorter fight. Also a 24% increased damage for the team, and a total of 36% if the person has a summon, and this would also apply to the person that is bondmate. So the person that's bondmate gets a total of 36% increased damage, while everyone else that doesn't have a summon would have 24%. So far and none, his signature is still his best. If not that, you're using the Battle Pass Lightcone Journey Forever Peaceful with a 12% increase to shield effect and also 12% damage to anyone with a shield. S5, it's 24% shield effect and 20% damage. Unfortunately, the base attack of this Lightcone is very low. However, 24% shield effect can make up for that when it comes to the shield part at least, and also does have some supportive capabilities, so it is still good. These are quite literally the only 2 actual options you can really use. The rest are niche, or you just use one with a high base attack. One of the best ones for a base attack actual Lightcone is Japard, since the effect actually does apply, even though the effect is pretty bad since he doesn't scale off defense, and the effect hit rate is also not really useful. But the base attack is 476, which is good for preservation. So this would be the one you would use, and then I guess the extra defense if you were to take hits is there, as opposed to not, but that's not really what you're focused on. Same thing with Wield Wildfire, as the actual base attack of this Lightcone is high, and then I guess you would have the actual effect of decreased damage and HP restore, which is really whatever, it's mainly for the base attack. Otherwise, you would just go to your actual Lightcones and filter the highest base attack and use whatever is available to you. You can also do the trend Lightcone effect mainly for Acheron teams if you're using them there. However, that's not really that great anymore. For relic sets, the only 4-piece you still want to use is just Self-Enshrouded Recluse, with a 2-piece increasing shield effect by 10%, 4-piece an additional 12% to shield effect, and also 15% crit damage to anyone holding a shield that's provided by the wearer. Very simple, shield effect is just going to increase his sustaining potential, and also supportive effects with 15% crit damage. So any team that does crit, which is really any team you use him on that isn't really dot, that's like the only team that wouldn't, this effect is going to help with some supportive effects. So this is like by far the best set you can still use on him. You can also just use a 4-piece knight with 2 pieces being useless, unfortunately, but the 4-piece increases max damage absorbed by shields created by the wearer by 20%, so extra tankier shield, but the 2-piece unfortunately being useless is pretty bad. However, it's still there if you do just happen to have a set laying around for whatever reason, but you just want to use Self-Enshrouded Recluse, as that will give you the best performance overall. If you need to combine 2-piece, it really depends, since you do build a lot of speed on him. 2-piece speed sets are recommended, so 2-piece Diviner, 2-piece Warrior Goddess, 2-piece Relieved Ordeal, or 2-piece Hackerspace, as they all provide 6% speed, and you combine that with 2-piece of an attack percent increasing set, or 2-piece Self-Enshrouded, as 2-piece Self-Enshrouded increases the shield effect, and 2-piece attack percent sets. So Navigator set, you can do 2-piece Hero set, 2-piece Wind Soaring, 2-piece Prisoner, or 2-piece Musketeers. That's attack, further increases his buff, and also a bit of the shield. So if you want more shield, 2-piece Self-Enshrouded, and if you want a little more buff, then you would do 2-piece attack. However, just really get 4-piece Self-Enshrouded. These next two options are more specific. If you do have a signature, you can actually run the 4-piece Warrior Goddess, with 2-piece providing the 6% speed, and the 4-piece providing an additional 6% speed by giving the wearer Gentle Rain when the wearer or their memo spread provides healing. So 6% speed for the wearer and crit damage 15% increase for the entire team. So you do need his actual Lightcone because that's the one that applies healing. If you don't have his Lightcone, you'll have no heal, so you cannot use it. And you would need to have it happen because it lasts for 2 turns. So more speed for donning, which is good. And also some extra buffing. It's the same thing as the Self-Enshrouded, as it does also provide 15% crit damage. So if you want more speed instead of the shield effect, and you have his Lightcone, you can use this. And then specifically, and I mean specifically for Finon, you can use Relieved Ordeal. 6% speed 2-piece, and the 4-piece provides 18% crit damage for the person that has skill or ultimate used on. So when Donning uses his skill primarily here on an ally, they get 18% crit damage that stacks up to 2 times. This would require you to keep spamming skill, and that's why I say usually use it with Donning specifically, because Donning would have this on him, and then you would use it with Finon. I don't know why I said specifically Donning, I meant specifically Finon. You use the effect on Finon, and he's able to take those buffs into his ultimate and extend it throughout the whole thing. Hence why this is mainly only used with Finon, just because it'll provide him the best increase, as it is up to 36% crit damage. But with other teams, it's a lot more unsustainable. For Planar Ornaments, you also just give him any of like the generic ones, with the most common one being Lushaka for 5% energy regen and 12% attack for the character position first in the team lineup. So you give that person that you are usually always going to dedicate Bondmate as a further attack increase. And the energy regen is also nice for donning. If you're pairing them with a physical DPS such as Finon, then you can also run the Penacony set for 5% energy regen rate and 10% damage for everyone that is the same type as the wearer. So in this case, they would have to be physical, otherwise the effect is not going to be doing anything besides the energy regen, and at that point, you just run Lushaka. For the main sets on the relics, for the body, you want to run attack percent. For the feet, you want to run speed. For the orb, you want attack percent. And for the link rope, you want energy regen rate. For the substats, you just stack speed and attack percent. That's really it. Get some flat attack rolls in there. If you really want, you can get some effect rest to avoid getting CC'd. Speed, ideally, you get it to 160 or higher, as you want to have donning be as fast as possible. If you can get more than that, reaching like to the 170s or 180s, especially combined with like Dance for more turns, that's good. And then the actual attack amount depends on the Lightcone. Like if you're running the Battle Pass Lightcone, reaching something like 3k attack can actually pose to be a lot more difficult than you think. So with the Battle Pass Lightcone specifically, you would be aiming for around like 2,800 ideally, or 2,700. With a high base attack Lightcone, you're aiming for around 3,500, and with the signature, you're aiming for around 41 to 4,200 or higher. And then effect rest specifically, you just get that up as much as you can. So speed being the goal, get it to hyper speed or more if you can. And then attack specifically, you would just get it depending on your goals. With the battle pass, you can really only get around 27, 2,800 unless your Relics are really good. You can still push that to 3,000 if you can. That's really, really good. With a high base attack Lightcone, you're aiming for around the mid 3,000s, and then with the signature, you're aiming for closer to the mid 4,000s, but like under, so like between the base 4,000 and between 4,500. That's usually where you're going to be, most likely ideally around 4,200. Now for some general team building ideas, as Don Heng is a sustain, you can really use him anywhere that he's applicable that would be useful. You can really go on any team besides the ones that he doesn't necessarily work on, which is HP drain teams like Remembrance, and then also something like the break team because they have characters like Gallagher or Linksha. and just overall better options. So general team building senses, you could just run them on like a generic hyper carry. So I'm just going to use Asheville as an example as I use them in the video. Third slot would be one of the supports. In this case, I'm just going to use Sparkle for base speed Asheville. Last slot would go to another support, obviously use Tribute. So in a sense, it could look like this. I also do want to talk about this Sunday donning synergy specifically. I do have a video dedicated to Sunday that talks about why the actual effect of Sunday plus donning doesn't actually work as you think. And it's not as strong as you probably think. However, there still is synergy. You're still action advancing the dragon. You're still getting the full effect of Sunday's skill. So the synergy is there, but it is not actually as strong as you think. But again, it exists. So Sunday is often paired with donning for that exact reason. And then your hyper carry, and then third slot usually always is Tribute in a sense. With the recent follow-up team, this also would apply. So instead it would be Mortanix Blade, except in this case, you would want to have Doning's Lightcone to sustain Mortanix Blade's actual HP, and even then, it's not going to sustain it in longer battles. So in Knights or Kings in Anomaly, you probably will not truly be able to fully sustain it depending on your builds and investment, but in something like MLC, to be honest, you can definitely sustain it with this Lightcone. And if you have good investment, but you don't have Doning's Lightcone, and you can destroy the battle before Blade reaches 1 HP, then that also works. In this case, you would be dedicating the Bondmate as Asheville, as he gets a good increase from Doning's attack buff. Finon teams also do work, however, I don't really ever recommend running a sustain with Finon, as Finon is definitely coded to be sustainless. So a team could also just look like this. Last thought can be Cyrene, so something like that for a sustained team, or if you're not running Cyrene, you're running Sunday, you can just run him there instead. But yeah, I don't really necessarily recommend running Donning with Finon anymore, just because Finon really wants to be played sustainless for the best damage potential. But yeah, like the general like hyper carry senses, it could just look something like this. Just use Donning wherever you need it that isn't an HP drainer, because then you are destroying the potential. If you threw Donning on Remembrance, you're throwing. And then on Break, they have like their dedicated stuff, so you can use Donning with Dot as well, as he does work really good there. Not better than Huopo anymore. However, the option is still there, so you would just run the 3 Dot trio, and then Donning's the sustain, dedicate Bondmate to either Hyceline or Black Swan, and you would be good to go. And that is the full Permansor Terrae 4.4 updated donning guide. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the tips and content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.